I'm Melina, and up until my 30th birthday, the most exciting thing in my life was when the accounting firm I worked for switched from PCs to Macs. Not exactly thrilling news. Then, at a friend's birthday party, everything changed. That night, I stood in a crowded living room, holding a soda and feeling awkward in my too tight dress. The music was deafening, making it impossible to talk, but perfect for catching Mark's attention. He was noticeably taller than most, and he confidently strolled over. "Hey, you're Melina, right?" His voice cut through the booming bass. "Yeah, and you are." I sipped my drink, trying to seem calm. "I've seen you around. Mind if I join you?" He didn't wait for my answer, just positioned himself beside me. "Not at all," I replied, my voice drowned out by the music. "So, Melina, what brings you here tonight?" He leaned in casually, but his eyes were intense. "Just here for Sarah's birthday. You know her long?" I asked. "Yeah, we went to college together. She keeps inviting me to these things," he shrugged. "I get it. I work with her. She's kind of hard to say no to." I chuckled. "An accountant, right?" He nodded knowingly. "Yep, numbers are my game." I joked that I usually found nothing funny about spreadsheets. "Sounds thrilling," he grinned, and I couldn't tell if he was teasing me or not. "Oh, absolutely. It's all wild parties and high stakes in the accounting world." We laughed again. And that's where it left off. After feeling the ease of talking to someone genuinely interested in me, I experienced a new, exciting, and slightly scary feeling. Mark suggested we step outside for some fresh air, and I eagerly agreed. Outside, away from the noise, the cool air was refreshing. I asked him, "What's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" I was trying to sound smooth, but I felt nervous. He replied with a smile, "Just looking for a good time, I guess. And maybe someone cool to hang out with." His smile was warm and genuine. We talked about everything and nothing, movies, books we liked, and how he was into graphic design but stuck in a corporate job he didn't love. It felt like we'd known each other for years. As the night wound down, he asked for my number. Hesitant at first, I eventually agreed. It felt right. The days after Mark's call flew by in a blur. Before I knew it, I was getting ready for our first date. My nerves were all over the place. I didn't have much experience with this sort of thing. I chose a simple blue dress, nothing fancy. Mark picked me up at exactly 7 o'clock. His car was clean and well kept, nothing flashy, but it suited him perfectly. As I got in, he flashed me a smile that made my cheeks turn as red as a tomato. "You look great, Melina," he said. "Thanks," I mumbled, trying to hide my embarrassment. "You look nice too." We went to a cozy Italian restaurant he knew. The food smelled amazing, but my stomach was doing flips. We ordered pasta, hit with some fancy sauce, and meat with plain old marinara. "So, Melina, tell me something about you that no one else knows," he asked, expertly twirling spaghetti onto his fork. I chuckled nervously. "Well, I'm pretty boring, but I guess not everyone knows I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under 1 minute." "Really? That's pretty cool. You'll have to show me sometime," he said, raising his eyebrows. "Sure," I said, starting to relax a bit. "What about you? Any hidden talents?" "I make a mean breakfast burrito," he boasted with a grin. "Best you'll ever have." "I'll take your word for it. Maybe you can prove it sometime," I teased. The conversation flowed, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mark and I saw each other constantly. He would come over after work, or we'd meet for lunch near his office. He showed me his favorite spots around town, little nooks I'd never noticed before. It was like seeing the city for the first time. Things got serious when he invited me to meet his parents, Jack and Mary. They lived in a small but cozy house filled with photos and knickknacks. Mary hugged me the moment we walked in. "We've heard so much about you, dear," Mary said, squeezing my shoulders. "Mark, she's lovely." "Thanks, Mom," Mark replied, clearly pleased. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation didn't stop. "So, Melina, Mark tells us you're an accountant." "That must be interesting," Jack said, passing me the potatoes. "It has its moments," I replied. "Mostly just numbers, but I like the order of it." "And how's your family?" Mary asked, genuinely interested. "They're good, thanks. My dad's a businessman, always busy, but he's been really supportive of me." It was all happening fast, but it felt right. It was as if everything in my life had been leading up to this meeting. Mark feeling like someone finally saw me for who I was, not just some plain Jane accountant. One evening, a few months into our whirlwind romance, we were walking along the riverbank. The city lights reflected off the water, creating a picturesque scene. "Melina, I've been thinking," Mark started, stopping and facing me. "Yeah," I asked, my heart starting to race. "I don't want to wait any longer. I know this is fast, but will you marry me?" Just like that, my world changed. No hesitation, no doubt, just a simple "yes, Mark, I'll marry you." The whirlwind didn't stop there. Soon after, I introduced Mark to my father, who took to Mark immediately, appreciating his straightforward manner and obvious affection for me. "He's a good man, Melina," Dad said, giving his approval, which meant the world to me. So we got married. It was a modest wedding, nothing too extravagant, but it was perfect for us. I even found myself loving the way I looked in my wedding dress, something I'd never imagined. Smiling wide, I posted photos on my social media, sharing my joy with friends and family. After the wedding, life didn't slow down. It picked up pace. Mark and I barely had time to savor our newlywed bliss before he suggested something big. "Hey, Melina, I've been thinking," he said one evening as we unpacked another box of wedding gifts in our cramped apartment. "How about we move in with my folks?" I paused, a coffee mug in hand. "Live with your parents?" He nodded, looking serious. "Yeah, they're not getting any younger, and I feel better if we were around to help out. Plus, it would save us some money on rent." It made sense, I guess. Moving in with the in-laws was like something out of a sitcom. I couldn't shake the feeling that it might not be what his parents really wanted. Mark reassured me, though. "Absolutely," he said confidently. "Mom's been hinting about it ever since we got engaged. Come on, it'll be good." So 2 weeks later, there we were, pulling up to his parents' house with our lives packed into boxes. Mary, Mark's mom, was already waving from the porch before we even got out of the car. "Oh, Melina, we're so thrilled to have you both here," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that was a bit too tight. Jack, Mark's dad, clapped him on the back. "Welcome home, son. And you too, Melina." The house was cozy, filled with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum from the 1970s. I tried to keep a smile on my face, but I was already missing our little apartment. Mark sensed my hesitation. "It's going to be great, you'll see," he whispered as we carried boxes inside. The first few days were an adjustment. Mary was constantly hovering, always popping into our room to ask if we needed anything. "Just making sure you're comfortable," she chirped, while I tried not to cringe at the invasion of privacy. One evening, we all sat down for dinner. Mark, me, Jack, and Mary. The conversation was painfully mundane until Mark dropped another bomb. "So the house needs some major repairs," he announced casually between bites of meatloaf. "Repairs?" I choked on my mashed potatoes. "Yeah, the roof's a mess, and the plumbing's from the dark ages," he said. Jack nodded solemnly. "We were thinking," Mark continued, avoiding my gaze, "that maybe we could all chip in for the costs." I glanced at Mary, who suddenly seemed very interested in her plate. "All of us?" I stammered. "I just got a pay cut at work," Mark muttered, "so I'm a bit strapped at the moment." There it was. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "I'll see what I can do," I managed to say, though I wanted to say much more. Mary perked up, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, Melina, that would be so helpful. You're such an angel." The next few weeks were a blur of contractors and repairs. I wrote checks and smiled through gritted teeth as Mary gushed about how wonderful the house was looking. Jack slapped me on the back. "You're really part of the family now, Melina." "Part of the family?" "Sure, the part that pays for everything." One particularly grueling day, after yet another round of expensive decisions, I collapsed on our bed, exhausted. Mark came in and sat beside me. "Thanks for handling all this, Melina," he said, sounding almost sincere. "It's fine," I lied, staring at the ceiling. "Just didn't realize how much it would be." He squeezed my hand, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. "It'll all be worth it. This is for our future, right?" Mark reassured me one night. "Our future," I echoed, not quite sure whose future we were building anymore. As I lay there, listening to Mark's steady breathing, I couldn't help but wonder if moving in was the right decision. But there was no going back now. I was in this deep, and I had to see it through, whatever the cost. After the renovations, the house looked great, like something out of a magazine. Honestly, despite the financial strain, I felt a bit of pride looking around. We decided to throw a small dinner party to celebrate, just the four of us. That's when everything took an unexpected turn. We were in the middle of dinner, laughing and sharing stories, when Mary suddenly got quiet. The room felt heavy all of a sudden. She looked at Jack, then at us, her eyes tearful. "We need to tell you both something important," she said, her voice shaky. Mark and I exchanged looks. "What's going on?" I asked, my stomach tightening. Jack took a deep breath. "The house, it's heavily mortgaged. We owe $200,000, and the bank could take it away if we don't settle the debt in 2 months." My fork clattered to my plate. "What do you mean?" "All the repairs we just paid for." Mary started sobbing. "We were ashamed, and we thought we could manage it. But after the repairs and everything, there's just no way." I felt like I was in a bad dream. All the money, all the effort, it was for a house that wasn't even secure. "So what are you saying now?" My voice was sharper than I intended. "Well," Mark started, avoiding my eyes, "I was hoping, maybe, Melina, you could talk to your father." "Are you serious?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Ask my dad for $200,000. It's just, after his help, the house would be secure for us, for our future," Mark pleaded. Mary's sobbing grew louder, making me feel like the villain in this crazy drama. "Please, Melina, it's our home. We've spent decades in this house." I was furious, but the tears and pleading wore me down. "I'll think about it," I finally muttered, feeling trapped. The next day, I called my dad hesitantly, explaining the situation. To my surprise, he agreed to help, but on one condition. "I'll give the money, Melina, but only with a formal agreement, a receipt. I want everything documented." When I relayed this to Mark, he wasn't happy. "Why does it have to be so formal? Can't you just trust us?" "It's $200,000, Mark. It's a lot of money, and he's just being cautious," I argued, feeling the divide between us grow. "He'll get his paperwork," Mark muttered, clearly annoyed. The paperwork was drawn up, and the money was transferred. Mary and Jack were relieved, constantly thanking me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed between Mark and me. The future that once seemed so clear was now clouded with uncertainty. When I thought my life couldn't get any darker, tragedy struck with brutal suddenness. "Melina, it's your Aunt Judith." Her voice came through the line shaky and choked. "Your dad, he had a heart attack. It's bad." My heart dropped to my stomach. "What? How is he?" "He didn't make it, honey. I'm so sorry." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "No, that can't be right," I mumbled, feeling numb. I hung up and turned to find Mark standing in the doorway. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "My dad, he's gone," I managed to say before everything inside me broke, and I started sobbing. Mark came over and put his arm around me, but it felt like being hugged by a stranger. "I'm sorry, Melina," he said, and it sounded sincere, but I was too lost in my grief to really hear him. Exhausted from another long day of funeral planning and negotiations with the agency, I came home earlier than usual. I expected the house to be quiet, but as I inserted my key into the front door, I heard voices from the living room. It was Mark, his tone dripping with frustration and disgust, talking to his parents. "I can't do this anymore. Living with her is driving me nuts. She's just, oh, it's too much," Mark complained. His mom, usually so sweet and understanding, replied in a stern whisper, "You have to hold on a bit longer, Mark. We need to figure out what to do with those receipts your father-in-law had. Melina has them now. The sooner I get out, the better. I'll grab those receipts and destroy them, and then I'll start all over again with that rich beauty I told you about." Mark's voice was cold, calculated. I felt a chill run down my spine. Here I was, mourning my father, while the people I lived with were plotting behind my back. They weren't the loving family I thought I married into. Instead, they saw me as nothing more than a means to an end, a way to secure their financial troubles. Rage mixed with shock, but I knew I had to keep my cool, so I slammed the door loudly as if I had just come in, disrupting their scheming. "Oh, Melina, you're back early. How did everything go with the funeral plans?" Mary's voice shifted instantly to one of concern, her eyes wide with faint innocence. I forced a smile, my stomach turning. "It's all coming together. Thanks for asking." As I spoke, I could see the quick glance they shot each other, their faces a mask of fake concern. It made my skin crawl, knowing their true colors. But I realized that showing my cards now wouldn't help. I needed to be smart. I needed to protect what was mine and possibly even get some justice for their deceit. The funeral was somber, the air heavy with grief and murmured condolences. But as the ceremony wrapped up and we returned to Mark's parents' house, the true colors of the family I married into began to show. As we gathered in the living room sipping lukewarm coffee, Mark's demeanor shifted. His usually charming facade crumbled away, revealing something more sinister. With a cold laugh, he looked straight at me and dropped the bomb. "Melina, pack your things. You need to get out. I got someone else now, someone better." His words should have been like a slap. I pretended to be stunned, but before I could respond, Mary chimed in with a snide giggle. "We've really had enough of you, dear. We only put up with you for your money." "What about the house?" I asked, feigning innocence. "The house that I paid to fix? The $200,000 I poured into it." Mary laughed harder, as if I'd told the best joke of the year. "Oh, sweetie, this house is ours. You're nothing here." Mark's smirk widened. "And those receipts you're so proud of? Found them in your dad's house and burned them. They're gone." For a moment, I let them believe they had won, but then I couldn't help it. I burst into laughter. My reaction confused them, their smiles faltering. "Why are you laughing? What's so funny?" Mark demanded. I wiped a tear from my eye, still chuckling. "You three are just pathetic. You think you're so clever. The receipts you destroyed? They were copies. The real ones are safe with my lawyer." The color drained from both their faces. Mark's arrogance turned to panic. "You can't prove anything," he stammered. "I can, I will," I shot back, my voice steady and firm. "Now I want my money back, all of it, or my next call is to the police." Mark and Jack looked at each other, their earlier confidence replaced by fear. Jack, usually bold and brash, began to plead. "Melina, please, let's talk about this. We can sort something out." With the truth now out in the open and the leverage squarely in my hands, the negotiations with Mark and his parents dragged on longer than I expected. It was clear they were trying every angle to sway the terms in their favor, but I wasn't about to budge. "Look, it's simple," I stated firmly during one of our numerous discussions at their now legally mine kitchen table. "The house gets transferred to my name in exchange for the IOUs. That's the deal. No more games." Finally, they relented. We all agreed that the best course of action was to make everything official and legal. I insisted that everything be documented by a lawyer and confirmed with the proper papers. At the lawyer's office, the atmosphere was tense as documents were signed and notarized. I watched closely as each signature was applied, ensuring there was no room for further deceit. Once everything was finalized, I collected the documents related to the transfer and turned to Mark's mother, who looked deflated yet somehow still carried a hint of her former haughtiness. "I'll be keeping these in a safe place," I said, holding up the papers, before slipping them into a folder, just to ensure no one is tempted to pull any stunts. With the legalities handled, the divorce proceedings were straightforward. Mark was quiet, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be seen. When the final papers were signed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A chapter closed. On the day they moved out, I stood on the porch of my now fully owned house and watched Mark, his mom, and dad carry their belongings to a rental van. Their movements were slow, the mood somber. I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. This wasn't how I imagined my marriage ending, but under the circumstances, it was the best possible outcome. After everything settled down and I began to enjoy my newfound peace, word got back to me through friends about Mark and his predicament. Apparently, the grass wasn't greener on the other side. His mistress had dumped him not long after our divorce, and his parents. They were now crammed into a tiny apartment, a stark downgrade from the comfortable house they once had. It seemed karma had caught up with them quicker than I expected. Despite their situation, they started reaching out to me, bombarding me with calls and messages, probably hoping to weasel their way back into my life or at least my house. But I was done with their deceit. I blocked their numbers without a second thought and blacklisted them on all social media. It was liberating, cutting the final threads that connected us. One afternoon, as I was enjoying a quiet moment with a book in my living room, a knock came at my door. Peering through the peephole, I saw Mark standing there, a pathetic figure holding a bouquet of flowers. The audacity of it made me scoff. Opening the door, I couldn't help but laugh outright at the sight of him. Really, Mark? Flowers? He shuffled uncomfortably, the bouquet seeming to wilt along with his spirits. Melina, I have realized so many things. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Remember when you told me I disgusted you? I interrupted, leaning against the doorframe, not bothering to hide my amusement at his discomfort. What changed, Mark? Run out of options. He looked down, shame clear on his face. I made mistakes, but I'm here to make things right. I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for him, almost. You're not here to make things right, Mark. You're just desperate to get back to your comfortable life. But guess what? That life doesn't exist anymore, not for you. His face fell, and he took a step back as if my words were physical blows. Melina, please, save it. I cut him off sharply. I want you to leave. Don't come back here. We're done, forever. Mark stood there for a second longer, his hope visibly crumbling. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his shoulders hunched in defeat. Returning to my book, I smiled to myself. The quiet of the house wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, a stark contrast to the chaos that once reigned here. I was finally at peace, living life on my terms, and no bouquet of flowers or sweet talk could disrupt that. I was truly finally free.